For today's podcast, I would like to focus on the book of 2 Samuel. Earlier, when we talked about being some repetition even within the books of Moses, we also find in the Old Testament that there is some repetition when we're looking at 1st and 2nd Samuel. We're looking 1st and 2nd Chronicles and 1st and 2nd Kings. So we do see some repetition. When I look at 2nd Samuel, the things I want to draw from that are things that I may have already discussed in other podcasts where I've looked at some of these other books of the Old Testament, and perhaps there might be some more repetition to come as well. When I look at 2 Samuel, it continues to, for me at least, be focused on King David and David's continued reign. We also kind of looked at that when we're looking at the book of Kings and the book of Chronicles. We also in some ways focus on David as well as looking at the writings that are attributed to King David within the Psalms. So when we're looking at the book of 2 Samuel, which is what we're looking at here, when we're looking at the book of 2 Samuel, one of the things that we continue to look at is David's relationship with Jonathan and Jonathan's sister Michal, or Michal, or Michal, however you say her name, who was a sister of Jonathan. And Michal was David's first wife, and for a period of time was his first and only wife. And so in the book of 2 Samuel, we continue to get some clues that help us maybe not fully understand the relationship that David had with Jonathan and David had with Jonathan's sister, Michal, or Michelle, or Michal, however you pronounce her name, who was David's wife. So technically, Jonathan was David's brother-in-law, or technically David married his best friend's sister. So he probably was friends and had his relationship with Jonathan before Jonathan became his brother-in-law. All of that we don't really, none of us were there. There are no exact written records from David and Jonathan specifically, although we do see in 2 Samuel where some things lead us to have clues or theories or hypotheses. We once again in 2 Samuel see where Michal, daughter of Saul, who was also David's wife. In earlier records, we see where she was infatuated with David. He was a pretty man. She loved him. She wanted to marry him. And she actually went to her father, King Saul, and said, I want to marry David. And so that came about. But we see where she falls out of love, or falls out of like, or her infatuation with him goes away, because we see where she gets very upset with him for the way he dances and prances around, and she gets on to him, and he kind of puts her in her place and said, you haven't seen anything yet. I'll be more undignified than this. Don't you tell me what to do. And David and Michal never had any children together. Now, we do also see in 2 Samuel where David remembers his promise to Jonathan and takes Jonathan's living son into his palace, and he sits around the table with David's own sons, and he is treated as his son, even though he was not his son. Technically, he was his nephew, but he was the son of Jonathan. I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but his name was Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth, Mephibosheth, and he ate at King David's table, just like he was a son of David himself. We also get into 2 Samuel, where we hear, where we read the story of David and Bathsheba, and how it came that he had an affair with her, impregnated her, and then arranged for her husband to be killed because he did not follow through on what David told him to do to help cover up his shortcomings. I sometimes hear people talk badly about Bathsheba, and I'm not sure that's a valid thing to do. If the king called her to his palace, she didn't really have an option, perhaps, to tell him no. So we don't know that it was consensual. Technically, it technically could be a category of rape. Someone that was demanded or called to his palace, and if she didn't feel she had an option to say no. So we really don't understand all that. We do know that the Old Testament is almost entirely written from the perspective of a man and a man's belief about themselves being a higher life form than anyone who is non-male. So we really don't know that. So if you look at 2 Samuel, there's lots of things to think about. You can be thinking about David and Jonathan and their relationship. You can be thinking about David and his first wife, Michal, and their relationship. You can be thinking about David and his affair with Bathsheba, who would become his 8th wife. And there's lots to think about there. And you don't find just those stories in 2 Samuel. You will also find stories that pair with these, or stories that repeat these things in the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel. I said the books of Samuel. We don't know who wrote 1st and 2nd Samuel. May have been Samuel. Probably was not. We really don't know. So officially we say the author of 1st and 2nd Samuel is unknown. We don't know who it is. Also, when you look at 1st and 2nd Chronicles and 1st and 2nd Kings. So a lot of the things that I just drop little hints to or alluded to here are conversations that we've already had. And so I didn't really want to go full on into these conversations again, other than to say that when we read the Bible, we need to read with an inquisitive mind. A lot of times when we read and study the Bible, you should come away with just as many questions as you come away with summations or stories or beliefs. And that's okay. Nobody knows everything for sure. Not one single human. If anyone tells you they know exactly everything in the Bible and what it means, don't listen to them. Now, I have my beliefs based on how I've interpreted things, and I believe that I understand that correctly, but I do have a window open for learning more, having new thoughts, new ideas, and not knowing for sure. Did King David never even sleep with his first wife, Michal? I don't know. Nowhere do we have a historical record that answers that question. I think he didn't. But that's just my hypothesis, my conjecture, my guess. I have no facts to say whether or not I'm correct. That may be what I believe to be true, but I'm not going to tell you that I am true and you must believe like I do on that, because I don't know for sure. I believe that's how it was, but I can't prove that. And so my mind is open that I could be wrong in that. I believe David and Jonathan's relationship was more than just best friends. Can I prove the level of their relationship? No, but neither can anyone else. So if people have hypotheses or guesses or conjectures about David and Jonathan's relationship and challenge what someone else says, they don't have proof or evidence of that either. So all we can do is study the lives of these people in what we do know. And our walk away is to recognize that God used these people even when they messed up. And the lesson for us is God can use us even when we mess up. I was going to say even if we mess up. If's not the right word. Even when we mess up. The relationship between David and Bathsheba, was it technically rape? I've heard some people say she was bathing herself so that she knew the king was watching because she was tempting him. No, that's probably not true. Their ritual washing of washing their hands and their feet, following their monthly cycle, or the purification things, rituals they had to do in order so they could go back into church for whatever reasons. If she was washing herself on the roof of her house, that should have been her private area to do that. So if he's a peeping Tom and peeking around the curtains and looking and maybe having too much to drink, and I would equate that to people that are sneakily watching porn, to get, they're being bad, they're being a little pervy or whatever. That's probably what David was doing. He was being a little pervy and got to the place where he said, summon her to my chambers. If Bathsheba's in her house, someone knocks on the door and says, the king would like to see you. She could not have said no. It would not have been acceptable. So do I know that I'm right on that? No. Do you know that I'm not right on that? No. So all we can do is we can read and study and think and pray and apply that information to living in our here and now. So this is my short little conversations coming from 2 Samuel. They are not unique conversations because these are conversations we've had before when looking at other books in the Old Testament. Thank you for watching. If you like content like this, be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on my YouTube channel. Words to ponder.